Before our service begins, I'll ask, so that we can be entirely present, for people to make sure their cell phones are turned off. It's written in the book of Ecclesiastes that there is a season that is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The period of mourning is a complicated one. It's filled with many emotions and many memories, both bitter and sweet. And we begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers that will link Max Davison's life with our 3,000-year-old tradition. Beginning with Psalm 15. Mizmor leDavid Adonai mi yagur be'ohalecha, mi yishkon behar kodshecha. Holech tamim u'foel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo, לא רגל על לשונו, לא עשה לרעהו רעה, וחרפה לא נשא על קרובו. נבזה בעיניו נמאס, ואת יראי אדוני יכבד. נשבע להרע ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשך, ושוחד על נקי לא לקח, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם. A Psalm of David. Who deserves to enter God's sanctuary? Who can merit a place in the presence of God? The one who lives with integrity, who does what is right, who speaks the truth without deceit, who has no slander upon his tongue, who does no evil to others, who does not mistreat their neighbor, who scorns a contemptible person but honors those who revere the Lord. The one who never retracts a promise once made, though it even may bring them harm. The one who lends no money at unfair rates and accepts no bribe against the innocent. The one who makes these deeds their own, they shall stand firm forever. In the book of Ben Sira, we read that we're all destined to die, that we share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cry for the dead, hide not your grief, do not restrain your mourning. But remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace, and be consoled when the soul departs. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than constant sickness. Let us not seek to understand what is too difficult for us, nor search for what is hidden, nor be preoccupied with what is beyond, for we have been shown more than we can comprehend. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our days few in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time, but a good reputation endures forever. Mark, Andrew, Doug, family, and friends of Judge Davison. One of the Psalms that I just read is often recited at funerals. Within the Bible, there are many descriptions of the type of people upon whom our tradition places a high value. And one of the most striking is given to us by the psalmist in Psalm 15, which I read earlier. Although commonly recited at funerals, today the recitation of this psalm, I think, is most appropriate for a few reasons. First, because Max's Hebrew name was Mordechai ben Eliezer Halevi. He was a Levite. And Psalm 15 was probably recited by the Levites as what scholars call a liturgy of entrance. It takes a question and answer format. The question posed by the Levite served as a sort of entrance quiz for people coming to the temple, a set of questions to the arriving pilgrims. It opens, Mi agur be'ohalecha, who is fitting to sojourn in God's holy tent? Who will dwell on God's holy mountain? So that's one reason why the psalm is appropriate for Max. But the answer it gives is really the crux of why it's so fitting. It touches on the qualities that made Max such a special person. Those who deserve to be in God's special place are the people who exhibit the moral virtues that the psalm enumerates. Holech tamim ufoel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo. The one who lives without blame, who does what is just, and in his heart acknowledges the truth. Those three characteristics, the first three of the 11 that the psalm enumerates, in particular, were qualities that characterize the life of Max Davison. For Max was an honest and upright person who spoke the truth and who was dedicated to the triumph of justice in our society. He was a person of principle who stood up for his convictions, for the causes that he believed in. There was no pose or camouflage in his makeup. The rabbis say, toho kivoro. He was the same on the outside and inside. There are a number of speakers this morning, Max's sons, his law partner for many years, Dennis McCarthy, who I'm sure will touch on much of the qualities of Max's life. I'd like to set the tone by just sharing with you a few small anecdotes that I think capture a certain aspect of Judge Davison. When we first came to Allentown 22 years ago, Bobby and Max were our neighbors. They lived right across the street on Fox Meadow Drive, where we were renting a townhouse. And both Max and Bobby were swimmers. Actually, Bobby was close to 70 at the time, and she was still swimming 70 laps. Max was also there in the pool, and certainly was a good swimmer, but he loved to schmooze and make friends. And that was how they initially came to befriend us, because my wife, Adina, swam at the JCC. And during those years, we really developed a nice friendship with Max and Bobby. Adina consulted Bobby about writing a CV, and when we contemplated buying a home, we went over to Max and Bobby's townhouse for a conversation. And as I recall, their apartment was really quite interesting. It was decorated with an array of collectible clocks and an elevator. It had an elevator, which actually he was very proud of and loved. But after a brief conversation about the current political situation, you couldn't avoid politics with Max. The conversation then moved on to our question of whether or not to purchase a home, which, was a big decision. Max clearly enjoyed his role as an advisor, and he was good at it. Like the ancient Levites, he found the right question to ask. He turned to me and he said, "Rabbi, I'm not really involved with temple politics. Let me ask you this. Are you intending on staying at the temple for a long period of time?" And when I answered yes, He said, then go ahead and purchase the home. You know, Mark, actually, in reflecting on that story, it's interesting that when a number of weeks ago I came to visit your dad, and you were just talking about this, he thought I was interested in purchasing a property. And at the time, it seemed rather random. But one wonders if somehow that same memory was being retrieved from somewhere in the past. Perhaps it was even triggered by that same visit that I just referred to. The second incident came shortly after the high holidays. Every high holiday, Max would sit next to Erwin Greenberg of blessed memory, just beyond those dividers in two chairs. And on that particular occasion, shortly after the high holidays, Bobby, Max, Adina, and I went out for dinner at a restaurant at Tillman Square. And at one point in the conversation, Max turned to me and said, "You know, Rabbi, have you considered a more interactive," he would never say, "You should do this," or "You should do that." He would say, have you considered a more interactive format for your sermons, focusing on contemporary issues where people can get to express their opinions and talk? Little did Max know, because he truly only came for the high holidays, that was exactly what I had been doing every single week on a regular basis. And out of great respect, of course, I dare not say that's to Max. But the last point that I really want to make before we hear from our other speakers, in Ezer Kenegdo, a partner in life is so critical. And Max really had steadfast dedication and strength, particularly in regard to caring for Bobby during her illness. They had been married for 58 years. And when Bobby was at Arden Courts, Max was there at her side every single day. And would still go into the office, by the way. You made a point of telling me that. His devotion and care was simply unsurpassable. Tehi nishmato tzura b'tzura chayim. May his memory be for a blessing. And let us say, Amen. I'd like to first call on Mark Davison to say a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi. The story that you told was true. I had in my remarks a reference to it. In the last several weeks, Dad was declining, but the rabbi came to visit him several times, and I happened to be there during this conversation. I'm not sure, and so Dad lived at Country Meadows. He had an apartment in the assisted living unit in Building 2. I'm not quite sure how this conversation arose, but somehow it came up, where'd the rabbi go? That the rabbi was looking to move. Not sure how it came up, but Dad attempted to sell him his apartment at Country Meadows, which he was just renting. He didn't own it. And there was this big conversation. I kind of forget how it ended. You gracefully acknowledged that you would think about it, I think is what you said. But anyway, I have some thoughts that I prepared. First of all, thank you all for coming. As I think about today, we're here to really honor and celebrate the incredible life my dad had. And I think everybody here probably has a story or two or 20 about being with my dad. But to me, he was a loving father, and I know he was a pillar of the community, but he was also a superhero. And he was my superhero. Dad was a beacon of wisdom, and I'm grateful for his influence on my life. By his actions, he taught us about integrity and how to live, as the rabbi said, kind of a high and a just life. We looked up to him. We learned from him. We respected him. We listened to him. He was someone to talk to and confide in. He was someone to joke with. He loved a great joke. And sometimes he was just simply somebody to sit and watch CNBC with, if any of you were aware of his love for the financial markets, or the New York Yankees, which was another one of his loves. But his superpowers were more than that, in my opinion. He didn't have to wear a cape or a mask. His superness was evident in the life he led. He was orphaned at the age of 8. Some of you may have read in his obituary. So he didn't really have a mother or a father figure in most of his life. But he was an extraordinary father to us. When I would talk with him about other things in life, or about work, he would listen, and then he'd use his best thinking, and he would say things to me like, do the right thing, or do your best. Always do your best. And he always inspired me and us to have good judgment. In fact, I remember one time he actually said to me that a man is often judged by how he exercises good judgment. And I think that's true. In my business, in my life, I've always tried to remember that. There are things you remember that your father told you. Another one is he stressed the value of education. And I agree with this viewpoint, and I've told my sons the same thing. I was thinking about it, I was reminded of the time that before I went to college, we visited a number of colleges. We visited Cornell University before I enrolled there. And he told me outright that the most important thing he could do for me was to give me a good education. And I think this was a lesson he learned when he was growing up in Shenandoah. He eventually got into college at Lafayette, and then he went to law school at Dickinson. And then, of course, he met and married my mom, went to his professional life as an attorney and a judge, and was successful. And he looked back on that, and he really credited his education. And even, when I was having a hard time deciding where to go, he just said to me, go to Cornell, you liked it, we visited it. And he encouraged me, even at the time he said, I'm on a judge's salary, it'll put a dent in our budget, but you should go. So I went. And our solution to that was I had to get a part-time job, which was okay. That was another lesson learned. Also, despite his busy schedule and demands of work, I see some friends from the old Allentown Jewish Community Center here. He always made time to come to our school events and our sporting events. It's rumored when we were younger that he never missed a sporting event that we had, and especially at the Allentown JCC, where he could often be found on many weeknights and weekends in the gym, in the bleachers, watching our games, watching us play ball. In later life, he still continued the tradition. I remember when he and my mom traveled to Washington, D.C. to watch me run the Marine Corps Marathon, and later they came to Atlanta in the heat, in the humidity, and the blistering heat of July 4th to watch me run the Peachtree Road Race. In the last few months and years, he was at Country Meadows, as most of you know, and his physical and mental condition deteriorated. Those of you who really knew him will understand that when I would come to visit him, any of us would come to visit him, we had to be prepared. His first question would often be, what did the stock market do today? So I had to bone up. I always had to know what Apple did, and Microsoft, and NVIDIA, and Rivian. There's about 10 stocks. He'd ask me the prices, because he had glaucoma in his right eye. He had a hard time seeing, and he often couldn't hear the TV. But he would always ask, how is work going into the end? How's work? How's the grandchildren? How are your kids doing? What's happening with them? And he asked me about my running and working out, all kinds of questions to stay current. So there also was this, just on a humorous note, he was in Country Meadows, and during the pandemic, my brother Andrew and his wife Sahara were here, and they spent a lot of time with Dad discussing where he would live, because he was deteriorating. It was clear he couldn't live alone. And he picked Country Meadows of Allentown. He looked at a number of places, he picked it. But then we would always have this discussion, where am I going to live next? And I would often arrive from out of town or from out of town, and after we got through with the stock market, he'd say, I've been thinking where I'm going to live next. But he wasn't going anywhere next because he wasn't physically able to be by himself. And so he would tell me, I want to go to the beach, or I want to go to Florida. And we'd have this conversation. I think this conversation, Rabbi, that you were talking about is one of those, where am I going to go next? I'm going to now sell the apartment, I'm going to move to Florida. But in the end, he was at Country Meadows, and just a quick call out to thank you to the staff. If any of them are here, they were phenomenal with him to the end. The hospice staff, the Griswold staff, we really appreciate the exceptional job that they did. So I spent 64 years being his son. I loved and respected him. Now I'm going to miss him. Well, while he didn't always express it, he thoroughly loved us back. He took great pride in all of our accomplishments, and in particular, those of his grandchildren who are here today. His guidance and support helped me to become the person I am today. I've tried to use all that. I observed and learned from him in raising my own kids. Dad, you will always be my superhero. I believe I said goodbye to you about 20 times over the last few months and weeks as I traveled here to visit you at Country Meadows. And I thought each time I left would be the last time I'd see you alive, but I'll say it one more time. Thank you for your guidance, your love, your strength, your support, for everything you did for us to enable us to become who we are today. You've left an indelible mark on my heart and the hearts of all who knew you. Rest in peace.
Next, we'll hear from Doug.
I thought I was going third, Andrew. You switched it up on me. So I just screwed that up. Oh, boy. That was very nice, Mark. Thank you for everybody coming today and honoring Dad. He lived a long, full life at 91 years. It was full of service as a judge, as you know, a leader in the community generally, and in the Jewish community. He was a leader of our family, but of course he was just my dad. I'm the youngest. I know you can tell that. Mark's 9 years older than me, and just 6 years older than me. So I think I was the bonus baby, so to speak. But I share many special bonds with him over the decades, I think for that reason. I followed in his large footsteps in pursuing a career in law. And I remember the day I was accepted to his alma mater, law school, Dickinson Law. That was really special. We always talked about legal issues. As Mark said, he got the business and investing debates. Andrew, of course, got the political debates, and those were great. But I got the legal issues. And obviously, there's been no shortage of high-profile legal matters to kibitz about, which we did. And in those chats, and really all the things, as Mark said, he always had a commitment to doing what was right, what was fair, and what made sense. And that's what he asked. And does that make sense to you, Douglas? And that's a guiding principle. Not just for me, but I know for my wife Lisa and my kids Emma and Allie, and I hope that that lesson from my dad passes through to them. Some of my fondest memories of my dad are our time on the tennis court. He could place a wicked drop shot, especially on the clay courts at Oakmont. And I'd like to think I can do that from time to time, too. It was always a time when we were on the tennis court that was filled with laughter and friendly trash talk, kind of like at the JCC, Schultze, and post-game analysis over cold drinks or Salvatore's or Yakos. And even as he attended every one of my basketball games at the JCC, he would always encourage me to play tennis. He always said, you can play tennis the rest of your life. And he was right, because I'm still playing. and I play with Lisa, Emma, and Allie, and I really appreciate that lesson, Dad. I think of you after every good job shot. The bad ones too, actually, I think of them. Our trips to the Jersey Shore are also a cherished family tradition. That's where I was with Lisa, Emma, and Allie this week when he passed. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And about being with him down there. He would spend hours and hours on the beach, sitting, reading, reflecting, reminiscing, watching the people walk by, watching the waves, not rubbing in his suntan lotion. But really, he reflected a lot on what had occurred since the last time we were there and what was going to happen after. And we're talking about the next steps in life, Penn State, Dickinson, careers, Lisa and the kids, and other relationships. I remember asking him, Dad, what's your secret in success? You're kind of got a lot of experience. What's your secret? And it's like Mark said, and like he said when he was interviewed recently when he got that JCC award, and they had a little video of him, and he said, I just try to do my best every day. Just do your best. Good advice. I follow that, or try to. Of course, no remembrance of Dad would be complete without mentioning his love of watching and participating and following certain sporting events. He was very focused on every Eagles touchdown and then Penn State, every Yankees home run, every Sixers slam dunk, all the tennis grand slams. I mean, the fact that he died during Wimbledon is interesting. We used to watch that all the time. He watched hours and hours and hours of sports. And that was fun. We drank A-Treat soda and Snyder's pretzels and bags of Utz chips. All these Allentown things are so intertwined with my memories of Dad. I will miss calling him after big games to either celebrate or commiserate. And I learned that that was the way he relaxed and shared stories, had lots of laughs. He had a great laugh and made connections. It was a way to be present with us. Even when he carried such a heavy load that you've all seen in his obituary, he was doing a lot outside of the family, and it was nice to just sit there and chill out. That's what I try to do too. As Mark said, he faced his share of hardships. He had the devastating loss of his parents when he was 8, very young age, and the tragic loss of my brother, and other ups and downs. But he persevered at all of those challenges, and as he got older, that was pretty tough too. And he had strength, and he showed us how to weather life's storms. Life goes on, is what he said in the speech we were looking at from his birthday not too long ago. Life goes on. He's not ready to give up. That's what he was saying. His dedication and loyalty to being the husband to my mom further shaped me, obviously. He was there every day, as the rabbi said, with Mom. And like him, I strive to be a supportive partner to Lisa, always there through life's ups and downs, and she is for me too. And his patience and wisdom and unconditional support to me live on through my interactions with Emma and Allie, I hope. As I look at them and my brothers and their families, I see Dad's values, his humor, his love for life. His legacy will live on not just in me, but in all of them. In his final years, as his health declined, our roles obviously reversed. It was our turn to take care of Dad. But even then, his wit and wisdom shone through, as Mark explained, asking those questions, the right questions. He never really told you what to do. He'd ask you the questions that would lead you to the answer. He didn't like to be asked questions, but he'd like to ask them. So we learned to answer and not ask too many. Dad, thank you for being my dad, my mentor, my tennis partner, and my friend. Your hard work, honor, and integrity shaped not just us, but so many lives. From the bench and otherwise, you supported us, you encouraged us, you trusted us to make good choices. You made sure we took time with family and to have fun. We'll miss you terribly, but your spirit lives in all of us. Your dedication to family and community will continue to inspire us. May your memory be a blessing for all of us. Thanks.
Next, we'll hear from Max's longtime law partner, Dennis McCarthy.
Good morning, everybody. First, I just want to say thanks to the boys. This is a huge honor, to have me be a part of this service. As the rabbi said, I was the judge's law partner. Actually, in 1994, the judge hired me right out of law school, and I've been with him ever since. I spent my entire legal career with him. After spending almost 30 years with him, I still call him the judge. It just seems to fit. Now, there's a lot to say about the judge. I'll do my best to keep it brief. The judge had an incredible energy and a phenomenal work ethic. He was always active, playing tennis at Oakmont, swimming at the center, playing golf at Lehigh. At 58, when many people are beginning to contemplate retirement, he left the bench to join Dwayne Morris and head up its Allentown office. At 73, when most people are actually retired, he and I left Dwayne Morris to form Davison and McCarthy. Remarkable. And at Davison and McCarthy, he wasn't a figurehead or semi-retired. He worked hard every day and truly enjoyed being a lawyer. The judge was also an incredibly loyal and caring person. When his wife Barbara became ill, he would visit her at Arden Court twice a day. His caring concern for everybody in the office, especially his longtime assistant and friend Joyce Davis, was ever present. He also cherished his large group of friends, especially his compatriots at the judge's lunch table, and I know a few of you are here today. Now, with all of that being said, we can't ignore the fact that we're talking about Maximum Max Davison. He was an imposing figure, a burly man with a stern voice and really impressive eyebrows. You did not want to get on his bad side. But at his core, he was kind and thoughtful, a real softie. He would listen to your problems and provide gentle guidance. He would take you to lunch on your birthday. He would be gracious and grateful for your help. He was the kind of judge that would sit and comfort a 14-year-old boy in juvenile court when the boy's mother didn't show up for his hearing. So here we are. We all knew this day was coming, but it's still hard. One of the luckiest days of my life is when the judge hired me. He started off as my boss. He then became my mentor and partner, and he ended up as my friend. He taught me to work hard, but not take it too seriously. He taught me to be a good lawyer, and I hope I made him proud. Most importantly, he taught me how to be a good friend. I'm going to miss him a lot. Thank you.
And finally, we'll hear from Andrew.
I have a text. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming and for your sympathy. Just want to look and see who's here. It's beautiful to see some faces I haven't seen in a long time. It means a lot to all of us that you're here. Off script for a moment. I remember back in when we were all on Allen Street before Mark went off to college. Mark and I got in a typical fight. And I stopped talking to him. I said, never going to talk to Mark again the rest of my life. And I held up for like 3 or 4 days, and my mom came over to me and she said, you listen to me. She said, one day we'll be gone, and you'll need each other. Well, I talked to him right away. But we've really come together. I love these guys. And thank you, Dennis. We love you. I know how much my dad loved you and cared for you, and I know how much you loved and cared for him. But I love these guys, and our love has deepened with your passing, Dad. These occasions are very hard for me. Since we lost my brother Ricky years ago, I can't walk into a temple and see a coffin and not break down inside. And this temple is located not far from what used to be some cornfields where my mom, who we all miss dearly, used to go and throw stones and scream when Ricky died. I can't stop thinking about that every time I go to Target. But I'm going to try and hold it together a little bit. I know I don't have to. The last several years were hard for my dad. He and I were very close. I gave him a big hug around his broad shoulders on Sunday last week and said goodbye. The last years were very hard, but he never lost his zest for life. Most of all, he wanted to be among you, hang out with his close friends, and meet and kibitz with people who knew him in the community. He loved it when he ran into someone he knew. He'd go to the store and look for people he knew. I'm certain he's happy you're here today. He'd want to be here among you. I know he touched and meant a lot to a lot of you. Please know that you touched and meant a lot to him as well. I'm just happy he had a chance to know and love Sahara and Cheyenne, his new grandson, who is in that room over there, 19 months young. Shai brought a smile to his face every time we visited. It was sweet and special. My dad and I had a lot of intense and serious experiences together. Mark and Doug touched on many of them. I have a lot of poignant memories of the hardest kinds, especially over the last decade or so since my mom passed. The thing that's coming through and shining through now today, though, is how, even in those times, he was just a huge, steady support, ready to pick up the pieces and live an enjoyable life. Life goes on, he'd say, just as Doug said. He'd want to do especially the simple, fun, healthy, and happy things that you do when you're trying to live a good life. Go for a swim, enjoy a good meal or a slice of pizza on the run, watch a ball game, see a movie, walk in the park, go for a stroll on the beach. We did so many of those things together all the time. Come and visit him, and it just be steady, just like that, the enjoyable stuff, through and during and after everything that happened in life. The kind of simple stuff and simple pleasures that build trust and company, a kind of trusted company to connect a parent to their child at the deepest of levels. I'm learning about that these days. My dad taught me about the good feeling of just being with someone and making such moments matter. Those days have started to feel far away, but I want to hold on to them. I want to hold on to every moment, every ball game. We'd sit there, we'd eat a bag of chips before the end of the first quarter, and we'd look at each other and say, what else is up there in the kitchen? Run up and grab a package of Oreos or something. I want to hold on to those moments, and I want to bring them back, even as I adjust to this new reality of my dad's passing. So maybe you can join me with a little reflections on your own. You may not know this about my dad, but back in the 70s, probably the hardest decade for my family, he was a big fan of the band Chicago. I think he listened to it because it had that 70s lift, moments in the music, especially the horn sections, where you could feel like everything was light and filled with love and happiness. Remember that band, Rabbi? In my grief the other night, I tried to revive some of those old feelings by listening to a few Chicago songs by the fire. One of them, entitled Old Days, succeeded. It brought him back. I wept. And I want to share it with you so that we might all remember that good feeling of just being around my dad. And what I'm sure was his good feeling about just being around us. The opening has that kind of heavy 70s boring feel, but then it lightens up. My dad loved the horn section. So this is for you, Dad. Hold on a second, I gotta turn up the volume. Maybe you know the words and you'll join me. There it is. Good times I remember, fun days, filled with simple pleasure, driving movies, comic books and blue jeans, howdy doody, baseball cards and birthdays take me back to the world gone away. Memories, seems like yesterday. You remember this one, Chuck? There it is. You hear it? That's why you love this stuff, I'm sure of it. Now this section is Here Come the Judge. There we go. There it is. Oh, old days. Thanks, John. Good times I remember. Gold days. Maybe you know the words. days I'll always treasure. Funny faces. Faces full of love to a world gone away. Boyhood memories seem like yesterday. Old days on my mind and in my heart to stay. Old days, darkened dreams of good times gone away. Old days, days of love and feeling fancy free. Old days, days of magic still so close to me. Old days, on my mind and in my heart to stay. Old days, darkened dreams of good times gone away. Old days, days of love and feeling fancy free. Old days, days of magic, still so close. Still so close to me. Still so close to us, all of us. I hear Shy crying.
For those of you who will be going on to the cemetery, make sure that your lights are turned on and your emergency flashers are lit. Either way, there is a meal of consolation that will take place at Lehigh Country Club, probably around 1 o'clock, just so people know you can make your way over there and express your condolences to the family there as well. I ask that you rise for the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bameromim Ametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanefei Ashchina B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Rakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Mordechai ben Eliezer HaLevi Shalach Leolamo Bigan Eden Eteh Menuchato An Balachamim הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור חיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח ושלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. We ask that the pallbearers step forward.